All right, welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain, literally here with Joe Daniel, finally.
Finally, we got one in person, live and in person. Am I sitting in the right spot? Do I need to move to face the camera?
No, we're good.
We don't know, do we?
I think we just talk to each other.
We just talk to each other? Okay, all right, let's go.
Yeah, so we're AFCA. It's been pretty neat already. Lots of networking. Ran into some pretty cool people. Got to talk a little ball last night with some guys. So, you know, it's been everything it was supposed to be. Have not gone to a clinic talk yet.
Have not done a single clinic, no.
But it was day one, so maybe tomorrow. And maybe not.
Maybe not. Nothing jumps out at me as like something I need to do.
Yeah, the networking piece so far has been more important than I'm going to go listen to a college coach tell other college coaches how to do something that I don't have the cat to do anyway. So.
Yeah, no, it was, it's definitely not, I mean, I've never been a huge fan of AFCA, but it's not a clinic. I wouldn't recommend that a high school coach goes out of his way to, I certainly wouldn't recommend a youth coach go out of his way to come. It's cool to walk around and see, you know, the coaching staff from big school or whatever. It's nice to network. It's nice to talk to some people. But the clinic-wise, there's better places, better value.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is probably against the rules to even say, but you can really just come and not go to the exhibit hall, and you save yourself $150.
Yeah, I mean,
just come but it depends on where it's at, because this time it's in this huge open Opryland resort. I'm sure it's not like that every time. So.
It's not like other clinics because most of the schools are going to pay for the coaches to come, as opposed to most of us. You know, sometimes schools will pay for you to go to a clinic, but a lot of us are going on our own dime. Or maybe it's coming out of a fundraiser that we fundraised. It's not money that the school has. So that does a couple things. This is a great place for college staffs to come and get away. They're not recruiting. They're not, a college staff and even a high school staff. If you brought your entire staff to come and just be somewhere else focused on football, it's great for that. But and you can learn a lot by talking to people. If I go to a lot of clinics, I want to be in a clinic session. Here, you can get more standing outside or going to one of the establishments than you can get maybe in a clinic room.
Yeah, for sure.
That said, there's a chance to hear people, big-time coaches, speak, and other clinics have this too. But the first time that I came in 2010, Lou Holtz spoke, and the nice thing about it is this is the only place where somebody at that, and I don't know who's speaking this year. I know we talked Matt Rule speaking, but they're doing football talks and stuff. This is the only place where you get to hear those guys talk, those really high-level guys talk to football coaches. Everything else that they do is to the media, right? They're talking to the fans, they're talking to the boosters, they're talking to the press, and we get in a room, and it's the only time that publicly they can speak our language, and speak the way that we were talking to someone last night, and I don't know how many names we throw out, but talked about when I interviewed Kirk Ferentz on the Football Coaching Podcast, and how much he liked doing that because nobody asks Kirk Ferentz about offensive line play anymore, right? Nobody says, tell me what your favorite offensive line drill is. Like they don't get to talk about that kind of stuff. They're interviewing all the time. So there is the value in that, is being around people that are, you can actually hear these guys talk your language. And if you're not in a place where, a lot of these schools, you can go to the college and you can talk to them in that regard. But a lot of times that's shrouded in recruiting. They love to have you come visit. They would also love it when you have a Division I kid to make sure that they get to see him. So there's that. I don't know. It's an interesting. It's not a clinic. It's not a football clinic.
Right. For a new.
It's a convention. I mean,
It is.
Yeah.
For a newer coach, I tell you what really stuck out to me is like obviously I've been doing a ton of self-study. So watching your videos, I've gotten into Cody Alexander stuff quite a bit, working with Kenny, and now I'm sitting in a conversation with a guy with whatever logo on his shirt, but those words are being used. Like you said, we're truly speaking that language.
Right.
We talked with, we did the Coaching 101 podcast earlier with Kenny and Adam Harvey from Texas. And when he started talking about basically the way that you play Sky, right? He's inverting a corner and a safety to get a quick guy right now in a slant hole, and then still coming down to play if
safety,
it's
right.
down. And so it was really neat just because if you just are with your high school team and you're doing self-study, there's a pretty good chance you're the most educated person on your staff, right? In whatever regard, you're the one studying. And so even sitting around talking to them about it, like you're going to start using lingo that they don't know, probably.
Yeah.
So it's just been really neat to walk around. Everybody's having the same talk. I've heard gap scheme, zone scheme. I've heard coverages, right? We went 0 through 9 early. Like it's really neat to be in a social setting that is set up for me as a new coach to reaffirm those things that I've been teaching or being taught. So it's been neat.
One of the things that I think is interesting, and you might have picked up on this, especially last night, talking to some guys who are really high level. Yeah, I mean, we're Division I, 30 plus years of experience guys. And then I heard guys come up and talk to them or ask them a question, and you could tell this is not a slight, not an insult, but this is fact. You could tell the guys who don't have that much experience because they use words that are terminology specific to their system.
Right.
And those words don't mean anything to somebody outside of the system, but that's all that they've ever done.
Right.
And in the conversations that we had with guys with 20, 30 years of experience, who have also been a lot of places, they don't use any lingo that's
school specific.
That's system specific. They know that if they say, just as an example, they know that if they say, like a coverage, where people use palms and all those did Kathy and all that sort of stuff, like those words don't mean anything to a lot of places, and so they call it quarters, and they a general term. They speak in general terms and they explain, and you understand what they're talking about. They don't. Sometimes I think that you get some guys, especially first or second, early, they haven't spoken a lot of clinics, and it's almost like they're trying to impress you with the words that they use. And when you talk to somebody who really knows, they don't need to impress you.
Right. There's no impression.
There's no need for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been super good. I highly recommend you get to an AFCA convention if you haven't. I don't. Like I said, it's not a clinic. There are some.
Yeah.
I was pretty upset we missed Matt Rule today. I wanted to go.
Yeah, we were
just listen to him speak.
Stuck in a restaurant. Yeah.
But we got stuck in a restaurant for 4 hours. So.
Yeah. It's a little. They're a little understaffed for what's going on right now.
Yeah. Kind of our AFC wrap up there, and I'm sure we're gonna try to record tomorrow morning. You got to fly out, so before you fly, and then hoping to lock some other guys into some guests and record with them. But tonight we're gonna talk. Literally tonight, it is out now, and then whatever
We're not
time you're
outside,
listening
but it looks like it. Yeah.
We're gonna talk. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we did the defensive staff breakdown. So we gotta obviously flip over and help our offensive-minded brethren. And help them break down their staff. So we will. Do you want to pay the bills here or pay them later?
Just check out. Where are we going? What are we looking for here? I'm thrown off a bit. Check out JoeDanerFootball.com.
There you go.
Just check out the website. Now we've got some things in flux, some things that are changing. So when everything comes out, it may be a little bit different. So for now, check out JoeDanerFootball.com, get into JDFP coaching systems. I think we're doing some things that are different than anybody else is doing. We've kind of transitioned from doing what everybody else was doing and trying to do it a little bit better to doing something different. And check it out. Go to JoeDanerFootball.com.
Perfect. Always have to mention the clinic, Adaptable Physical Therapy, there in Grove, Oklahoma. If you're in that area, that kind of that 4-state, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, come give Dr. Chamberlain a try. She's amazing at what she does. She'll help you, help your team, help your mom, your dad, your wife. Little story on PT. My grandfather, I thought, was going to expire this year. He had gotten stopped moving, and he lives in a different part of the state, so unfortunately it wasn't my wife, but he had a physical therapist come, and it's like brought him back. I mean, literally from the cusp of having to bury my grandfather. So, movement is medicine. It is magic almost if you just go move. So whatever it is that ails you, go see Dr. Chamberlain. She'll fix you. AthleticSpeedMovement.com. Also, that's Joe and I. We've stolen the words of Dell. Not stolen. Dell makes his cut.
He gets a cut. He does get a cut.
We have taken Dell's words from the last 45 years, and we're, putting them where you can get them. And in a world that has moved to getting things online, whether that's classes, schools, whatever, you can jump over to AthleticSpeedMovement.com and get all of Dell Basquet's teachings. We got right now, when you get in, it's kind of a time release thing on Dell's recommendations. So you get level 1 to get started and get your kids faster. And this is a program that it's helped. His first year at the Seahawks, he made an All-Pro, a rookie running back go All-Pro, right? I've talked, and you've heard us use the same names probably over and over, but Ron Roberts down at Auburn is a big fan of Dell's system.
Yes.
The DC there now, but talked about his run of national championships at the
Division II. Division II, Delta State, yeah. And by the way, Delta State was not hurting for speed, but he made him even faster using Dale's. That's one of the things, is it's not something it's not for teams that are slow. It works for you too, but if you're already fast, be faster.
Be faster. So jump over there, AthleticSpeedMovement.com. Bills are paid. Let's talk offensive staff. So first question is just like, I know when we talked defense, there was a minimum number you could do. You could be a 2-man staff and literally split the front and the back. Offense, that gets a little difficult, right? Because there's, number one, the offensive line plus a tight end. I'm sure if you were short-staffed, you're probably not going to worry about the tight end being a separate
Well, you could
entity.
hybrid it. You could definitely.
Yeah. So what's the lowest kind of split we can have, and where do we make that split?
You know what? Offensively, you can do 2. And it's a little bit difficult because in your run game, your receivers. Now, obviously, it all depends on the scheme that you run, right? And the things that you do. Like if you're double wing, it's very easy, right? You've got your 2 wings, your fullback. The tight ends are offensive linemen, so no problem. They're probably the best thing that you could do if you're short-staffed is just go straight double wing and try to run people over and run 5 plays. But you would use skill and linemen, and then your tight ends and probably your H-backs would have to work as hybrids. Your line works together, and then your skill works together. And again, the place where that would get difficult is your receivers not being, heavily involved in all of the exchange work that needs to be done in the backfield. Of course, the simple fix to that is make all your receivers back up, quarterbacks back up running backs,
Right.
and then, you kind of hybridize all of your players. I always think that it's best, especially if you're a small school, you want guys that can play multiple positions.
Sure.
So that's not the worst thing. 3 is probably the ideal minimum, where I can have receivers and your tight ends, your H-backs can split off with the receivers coach to work passing stuff, and then they can work with the offensive line to work the O-line stuff, and then you have a backfield coach who's coaching the running backs and the quarterbacks, which is not a problem because at all times they're working together, right?
Right.
If the quarterback is working on, obviously if they're handing the ball off, they're working. The running back needs to be there. If the quarterback is working on passing, well, the running back is either could be one of 2 things. He can go with the offensive line and work as pass pro, or he can run the routes and stuff. So any of and of course play action, obviously you need him there for the fakes and everything. So 3 would be probably the minimum. That would be the ideal minimum. I mean, you can make it. Like honestly, can you make it work with 1? Yeah. You just run the offense.
You're in team all the time.
Exactly. You're in team all the time. I would in that situation. I would probably do a lot of bird walking where everybody's working on the footwork. We would do a lot of, just on-air stuff without the defense out there, focusing on the footwork. And then, you could do it, but it's not ideal. And of course, where you really run into a problem is when you need to go actual team, because somebody's got to run the other side.
Right.
So I mean, in a pinch, you can make it work for a day. It's one of those things that for a day, but if you had to do it for any longer period of time, it'd be pretty rough.
So you talked about O-line, receiver types, and then backfield. At what point? I mean, you have more coaches now, so let's say you got 4 or 5. Like, what is that? We kind of make fun of tight end coaches, right? Like, you're the assistant O-line coach, my guy, and you're just going to push that tight end to the receivers.
Yes and no.
Pulling back.
I mean, yeah.
What's the first needed addition?
So the first thing you do is you go running backs, and that's really. I would love a coach who gets into the intricacies of coaching running backs. It's one of those things that I think there's receivers coaches that are really into the detail of route running, pass catching, training the eyes, training the breakdown, training the break of the routes. In our system, getting a running backs coach who could really work on and again, you could do this with one coach doing the exchanges, but somebody who really, really focuses in on the timing of the play. Just the best example is our outside zone play. So our outside zone play is very much based on timing, and it's ideally the basis of the offense, in that we drop step to get pointed at the aiming point, which is the hip of the tight end. So we drop step, and then we're taking the handoff so it's drop step, 1, 2, 3. As we take the third step, we're making our decision, our read. If that guy's inside, I'm continuing. We don't ever bounce outside.
Right.
If that guy goes inside, I'm continuing straight off the hip of the tight end. If he wants to go outside, I'm cutting. But the cut happens on the 5th step. So I go 1, 2, 3, I decide, I continue 4, 5, and then I cut vertical. There's no cut back on an outside zone. There's no bounce outside on an outside zone. It is either continue on that path right through the hip of the tight end or cut vertical, straight up the field, when you run it well. So to have a coach who would really work on the detail of that timing, to have a coach who would be focused on the alignment of that running back, because we talk about this, the question that I get all the time is, how do I make my offensive line better blockers? The very first thing that you do, and this is, you should try to figure this out in everything. How can I fix this without changing anything they do first? Now, I'm still going to obviously want to coach them up. Obviously want to get better at this, get better at that. But if I can do something that doesn't involve them at all, and then add on to that a few other things. So the very first thing that we talk about is, before you worry about an O-line drill or plays or anything like that, the very first thing that you need to do is minimize the amount of time that they stay engaged in the block. And that means the running back getting to the line of scrimmage, getting to the point of attack faster at the right time. That means the quarterback getting rid of the ball faster. Like, if your offensive line sucks, you shouldn't be running drop back passing. You should be running quick game and play action until your offensive line gets better. So if I can get a running backs coach, that's my 4th coach, and I need to be somebody who is going to really get into the detail of the running back position. And then the next place that I want them to get really detailed at in our offense is in the pass protection, and more importantly, in the check release. Because I need to see him get up there, pick up the guy he's supposed to get, or release and get out in the route so I can throw him the ball.
Yeah. I feel like running back is a great place to start, and I love what you're saying. You said you only make one read in outside zone. I remember where I picked up a second read, but I've heard people even coach like, D end is my first read, next guy with the hand in the dirt is my second read, but still, I mean, the timing stays the same. It's 3 by 5.
The timing is more important.
Make a cut. Joe's getting fanboy here at AFCA.
Sorry.
So.
Give me a minute.
Timing
The
outside
timing
zone.
is important. The read, Alex Gibbs. Granted, Alex Gibbs was coaching, Terrell Davis.
Right.
But Alex Gibbs, who was the guy as far as inside and outside zone, he didn't coach running backs to do anything. Now, Alex Gibbs is an offensive line guy, but as an offensive coordinator, he didn't coach to do anything. And I always say, there's two different running backs that you have. There's the one who's the best you got. This is what I got. I got to make a running back out of somebody. And he's mechanical, and I can teach him to make the read. Linebacker, by the way, is the exact same read. It's the exact same way. We were talking about, last night, linebacker reads and seeing the picture and reacting as opposed to teaching mechanical reads.
Right.
And our D1 friends don't worry as much about reads because they've got the guy that you don't need to coach.
Right.
And they just, Alex Gibbs can coach a read for his guys because he's the best athlete on the planet already. What are you teaching him? If you have a Division I running back, he's got vision. You can teach a read. I don't know if you can teach vision. Now, you can learn vision through experience, but if you don't already have it, you're going to have to get that experience. I need you to have reads. Eventually, you build up, and it happens to linebacker too. Your freshman, first time he's ever played linebacker, 8th grader, 7th grader, he's got to read and he's got to do all this stuff. As he develops, he starts to just see what's happening. Your running back will develop reads, but there's two different types of kids. There's one that you have to coach to be mechanical, and the thing about him, I had one. I loved him. He was crazy. He's still crazy. He broke a run in either the 10th game of the season or the playoffs. It was against Goochland. He broke a run. He got about 20 yards. He would have scored, but he had never gotten that far before. So he turned to figure out what had happened, and they ran him down. Because
the old practice.
Because
Practice carried over.
he was tough as nails. He was a 4 or 5 yard a carry guy. He'd get 8 on a good run. He wasn't outrunning anybody, and he was mechanical. And I've had other kids that just handle the ball, and the only thing that I would teach that kid when I've had the kid that has the vision to make those cuts and can see a seam, can see a crease, what you have to work on with him is the situations where we aren't going to make a cut. So with him, you have to drill 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, where I need you to take this ball. Barry Sanders was, and there's other backs that are like this now, but Barry Sanders would have that line where he'd have, 12 carries for 4 yards, and then he'd go 8, because he was looking for that cut. Now, he could run hard, like I said, he knew when it was time, but he had that vision, and sometimes it's not there. You have to teach that kid in situations, this is just, you need 2 yards right now.
Right.
Fall forward, follow, look, inside zone has a cutback on 1st and 10. Inside zone on, 3rd and 1, I need you to look and see where there's room pre-snap. I need you to get the football, and I need you to run at that spot.
That's right.
Get that.
Don't worry about
That's
that
it.
cut.
Yeah.
I like the short yardage obviously changes things. Once again, I don't even know who I talked to, a coach, but just put in that you don't pull linemen on the goal line, right? Because I know some people do still. I watched an NFL team score a touchdown today pulling linemen on the goal line, but it's still that why would you unnecessarily put extra movement in there for something to go wrong when it's a critical situation?
I don't think it has to be a hard and fast rule. Just as an example, we, in a year where power is our best play, I want to run something that our kids are confident in. If they believe in power, I'm going to run power.
Yeah.
But we always have in plays that, for example, we'll get into what essentially is a 31 personnel, 32 personnel type of look. The band is starting up. We'll get into a 3-back set, and it can be power I or it can be something else, and we will just block back with everybody on the offensive line, kick out with one of those backs, wrap with another back, so that way we don't have anybody pulling and leaving that space open. So I think there's a good reason to have both. I wouldn't rule out pulling on the goal line if it's your best play and your kids are confident in it, believe
Right.
This is
Just run it.
If we need 3 yards, this is the play we're going to run to get 3 yards.
So I know on the defensive episode we talked about scheme can dictate where your coaches go, and I think that's big time here as well. If you're going to use, we've obviously been working with Kenny all weekend now, so the gun tees is something he's created and selling like wildfire. But if you've got tight end H-back and they're constantly in tandem and they're constantly going to be working together, you might separate that as a position by itself, right? Instead of maybe I've got O-line backfilled with quarterback running backs, wide receiver, and then H's and Y's, because I need them to have that chemistry or whatever it is to be able to know in this weird sticky situation, I know my buddy in front of me is going to do that. He's going to down block that cat, so we just don't miss anything. Or if you go to the spread world, maybe that's a slot receiver coach instead of an H-backs coach. Like the running back coach can coach the H-back coach there, right?
Right.
Or maybe it is your slot receiver. A lot of guys, you got what you got, and maybe he is. Sometimes he's in at a wing, and he's in behind a sniffer, and sometimes he's a slot receiver. So just
not many teams are truly 10 personnel all the time.
Yeah.
So there's usually some differentiation between what the slots and the outside guys are doing. But if the fifth coach is going to be the tight ends H-backs coach for us, and the key there is that it can go one of two ways. Like you said, if I've got a very young coach, inexperienced coach, or I've got a guy that sometimes we hire guys that we just need a babysitter. We need a guy that's going to ride the bus sometimes, stay after. He's there, maybe he's kind of he's not as committed to the game as we are. Tight ends H-back coach. Another place to use that is you're in a staff where everybody coaches both sides of the ball. You give your defensive coordinator that tight end H-back job because he's going to be running the scout team.
Right.
And so I know that I got O-line coach, receiver coach that can look at those guys and watch those guys. And then truly what you said is relatively true. I need somebody that's going to shuffle them from being an O-lineman to being a receiver. So, get them from run drills with the linemen to 7-on-7 safely. But just like with the running backs coach, if I can get somebody, and I got to do this for a little bit this year, and it kind of changed the way things we were doing because I was part-time guy, so that was my role. And then I ended up spending more time with the O-line, but as part-time guy, I could be the tight end H-back coach. And that didn't last too long, but what I loved about that was for a little bit, I got to really focus in on that. And I got to coach the detail of being a tight end or being an H-back. We ended up not using a tight end very much, so especially early. And later on we brought a kid up and used the tight end as a package. But coaching up the H-back on little things that, in a perfect world, I have a really smart H-back who I don't have to spend a lot of time teaching this to, and I can just say it and he'll do it. Alignment. I always tell, and motions too. So when I've had a smart H-back, I tell them, because our motions don't say line up out in a slot and motion across and go to a wing. We just call say ham 3, which is H across motion to the 3 position, which is a wing. Well, it could be a wing position. It could also be inside, and that's the only thing to coach them on.
Right.
And when I get a good one who understands all this stuff, I say, all your motions need to change the numbers. Meaning that if I have 2 backs in the backfield to start the play, and if I'm motioning out to be a slot receiver, start in the backfield. Or start as a slot receiver on the other side of the field.
Right.
So that I'm either adding a number to this side or I'm removing one from the backfield. So if you're going to motion to a wing back, don't just start as a wing back on the other side. Start as a slot receiver and motion across and change the numbers.
Make them check and talk.
I need you, my motions should force the defense to make a check, make an adjustment, move somewhere, and if they don't, I should have the advantage. If you don't adjust a motion, I'm going to motion all night. So, but if my motions are just moving from behind the guard on the left side to behind the guard on the right side, you haven't really changed the numbers. Yeah. Not in a significant amount. Getting them to understand things like we always throw, if we're running a pass play, the H-back is lined up in a wing so that he can run his vertical, his route release. Getting him to understand, hey, on some runs, you need to be outside, and on some runs, you need to be inside. Getting to coach up those little things so that, because again, 3 means tackle area on the right. It could be a wing if we're running outside zone. It could be behind the guard if we're running inside zone so that he can kick out the other way. It could be behind the guard if we're running inside zone. It would be an H kick tag. It could be if we're running power, he's inside to kick out that way. That H-back becomes a focal point of our offense. So being able to spend time with him, being able to spend time with the tight end. He's the only one who has route releases with somebody in his face.
Right.
And being able to work with him on things like getting off of that defensive end and releasing into a route. Getting him to slam, we call it slam shoot, to punch and release on a play action. Getting to work with him on our check release, because he has a check release just like the back. In one, this all goes back to what you said at the beginning, we kind of joke about it. Yeah, that's the place that I'm going to hide a coach. I can hide a coach at running back and I can hide a coach there because they're always around. For example, my running back coach, I want the guy who's going to be super detailed at his craft, but he's also always going to be standing next to probably the offensive coordinator who's working with the quarterback. So his leash is pretty short. And, if he's a guy that's just moving those guys from offensive line to receiver, they're always, he's kind of supervised at all times. But if I get somebody who really, really, really is into the craft, they can make a huge impact by getting into those little things that it's really hard to get into if you don't have enough coaches.
So once we go up in size after that, I've seen people just go ahead and split the receivers, outside, inside. I still, just like defense, I almost wonder if you shouldn't split sides of the field so that your coach can coach those guys. I know, some offensive schemes, the kid goes the same side every time, right? You're just
Sure.
the left outside receiver, and then some, you flip your X's and your Z's back and forth. So of course that once again would dictate pretty heavily. I've also seen splitting up the O-line. So I've got my pullers and my non-pullers, right? So I'm going to have a guards coach and then kind of the center and tackles O-line coach.
Usually that's the logical thing is either having, so you could do it that way. A lot of teams will do the tackles and then the center guard, inside just because their jobs are, similar. That's the logical place because there's 5 of them.
Right.
To get an extra pair of eyes. And the way that we do our offense some years, not always, where we only run power to the right, counter to the left. So in that case, maybe the right side is, having the right side focused on down blocking and the left side focused on skip pulling and hinging, and then that kind of thing. We've always just done like kind of. It always starts out as the offensive line is, hey, you're the center guard coach, you're the tackle coach, or something like that. But the offensive line is such a unit that it really doesn't work.
Right.
You essentially need two guys speaking the same language to all five guys. And again, that's a great thing if you've got a defensive coordinator, so that you always, he can go run the scout offense, and you've always got an offensive line coach still there. If you're like me, and even as an offensive coordinator, you want to coach the offensive line, having another guy who can come in. For example, I want to go work 7-on-7. I have another offensive line coach who can work pass pro while I go work with the quarterback in 7-on-7, because I'm not happy with the timing of the routes or whatever. I can do that. So it's another, those are logical places. I think the offensive line is a logical place if you've got a sixth guy. And even if you with your fifth guy being a tight end H-backs coach, he essentially becomes a part-time assistant. And a lot of times what we've done is really, in this a couple of years ago we did this and it worked really well. The tight end H-backs coach was really the offensive line guy, and he was in charge of the tight ends and H-backs, but at 7-on-7 time, I would go and he would run our pass protection. And then the tight ends H-backs would work their check releases. The first team would be doing 7-on-7, the second team would be doing check releases or doing pass pro. So lots of ways to work that. I mean, that's another, if you have two O-line guys, that's a great place to use them.
I know that, so I was an assistant O-line coach, well, weirdly enough this year, but last year as well. And what you said about it not working, it almost doesn't work having two dudes there all the time.
Yeah.
There's like the guy, and then when he's gone, the other guy can just do it, because I think it is that part of that unit. They're going to usually attach to a coach, and that's who they're going to listen to, and especially if you aren't speaking the same language. So that's
the most important thing.
You need the help there, because it's five guys to watch at the same time, but they don't want you to have two guys like the kids don't.
It's right. They want to have one kid, and kids like to have one guy that they can.
Yeah.
They know that it all defaults to this guy.
Yes.
And because there are times when we use different language, it's just going to happen that we maybe say it one way, the other coach says it another way, and the kids know I'm going to do it that way.
Yeah.
And they'll disregard. Some of them can't handle that. Some of them are going to stop and argue with one of them.
Yes.
But your smarter kids, your more experienced kids, are just going to go, okay, coach, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to go do it this way though. Or they'll go do it the way that you said until you're gone.
Right.
As a coach, by the way, you need to be aware of that. Especially if let's say that you're the offensive coordinator and you've got a guy who sometimes says things differently. You need to be aware of that and not, be aware that happens. And when a kid's doing something and you don't understand why, go ask the kid why in a relatively side manner. And they say, Coach so-and-so told me to do it that way. And you say, okay, we'll talk about it. For right now, why don't you do it the right way?
Yes.
So
hopefully you don't have to put up with that as a coach, but it does happen.
But I mean, it does. And that's not like, if that's a regular thing, that kind of sucks. You need to everybody needs to be on the same page. But it will happen occasionally. Just from the fact that we all come from different backgrounds and we coach in different places. And again, that goes back to those really experienced coaches knowing, hey, everybody doesn't use the same language. and other coaches. Again, you won't find many guys with 30 years of experience who tell you this is the way to do it. But you'll find plenty of guys with 3 years of experience telling you this is the only way that works.
Right. Yeah. So we kind of talked about numbers now, and of course, if you keep adding up, split your receivers, split your O-line, whatever you need to do, you start. So now, like quality of coach. Okay, so I know on defense we talked about where the best coaches should be.
Right.
So on offense, I think, my humble opinion, you've got to start with O-line. Right? After the coordinator. The coordinator should be the guy that knows what's going on. If you start getting positions, definitely should be O-line. And I like the way you do it. As the offense coordinator, you were also the O-line coach. And that's what, even as a future head coach, I think that's what I'm going to do, right? Like, I want to be the O-line coach because it's so important.
For your job,
it's make or break.
The only reason you wouldn't do that is, the only reason you wouldn't be the offensive line coach is because you have somebody who's better at it.
Yes.
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that, as a head coach, or as a coordinator, that's the only reason that you should not be the offensive line coach. Is, and I can tell you that as an offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, I have never had an issue building a relationship with the quarterback.
Right.
There's not a, I get film study with him. I'm with him all through team. Like I said, I try to split and get somebody to handle some pass pro at least one day a week, go 7-on-7. Obviously, you've got all summer, 7-on-7 and all that sort of stuff, off season. I have never, ever had an issue getting that relationship with that quarterback. And then I can talk to the quarterback between plays, and I can still stand there and I still film the offensive line. And I talk to the offensive line. I don't stop practice to do it. I film it. And what I do with our offensive line, I think a lot of people would do this with the quarterback. I do this with the offensive line. We're really big on when practice ends, we need to get our guys out and don't waste their time. So I tell our offensive linemen that on those, 2 days a week where we're full go, I need 7 minutes after practice. If we're running late, I will take them out of conditioning. Sorry, coach, they need this. They don't run far.
Right.
Okay, they'll be all right. I need 7 minutes. I go into the office. I stick my iPhone. Now, actually, we can load it up to huddle by the time that I walk from the field to the field house.
Yeah, it's already ready.
It's already on huddle. But what I've done in the past is I'd have a little dongle that hooks up to an HDMI from the phone to the TV, and plug it in. And for 7 minutes, sometimes 7 minutes is one clip, and we just have that much to go over. But we might get 5 clips, might get 10 clips. But we're going to watch film because as the offensive coordinator, during that team time, I really am focused on the play. And then I want to come back to work on your footwork.
Yeah.
I think that's the best design. I know a lot of guys want to be the quarterback coach. It's not that hard to find somebody to be the quarterback coach. I've very often, and I still do believe this, unless you're an actual quarterback guru, do the same thing. This is the same thing I would do with a long snapper. Send him to somebody. Get him videos, get him whatever. Get them the training. I'm not worried about it. First of all, I don't want to have to teach a kid to throw.
Right.
Go find the kid with the best arm that can run, and let's just go. If he can't throw, you don't have time.
Yeah, this season especially.
Exactly.
To develop a thrower.
So coach your offensive line. Don't be the quarterback guy. And if you're running obviously again, it's just like every position we've talked about. I want somebody who is a quarterback guru, but if I don't have one, I better have a good offensive line, and I can get somebody. There's no O-line whisperers, right? I can't send them to O-line camp and have them come back and be taught how to run our offensive line stuff. He's going to go to a camp and they're going to have him take side and punch in, and I'm going to get him and be like, put your hands away, because you bench 185 pounds. And I don't send him to somebody to learn reads, but I can send him to somebody to learn how to throw a football.
Yeah.
And then in his indie time, is mostly exchanges because they can't have the ball on the ground. And when we go 7-on-7, he already can throw, and that's where I'm working the reads. You know, and he warms up. You know, he's got drill work and everything. I'm not just gonna, but I can send him somebody to teach him to throw. It's like speed. Like Dale talks about with athletic speed and movement. This is one of those things that I never understood with it, but I understand it now. For years because Dale's expensive. So we flew Dale in. It was $3,500 or whatever, and he taught us essentially the level 1 package. Well, in year 2, we ran the level 1 package again. In year 3, we ran the level 1 package again. Now, the teams that had a little bit more money, they're flying him in every year, and they're getting level 2 and level 3. Of course, now we can make that affordable, make that something that everybody can get. But we did it over and over again. And I talked to Dale, last year about it, and I told him we've just been running this 12-week thing. We do it 2 or 3 times a year. And he said, and I think I even asked, like, when would you recommend, like, how? He said, you don't need to do it again. Once you go through the 12-week program, the way that the program is set up, it imprints that technique on your brain. You can then send that kid to basketball season and don't worry about it. You don't have to fix him when he comes back. He's running like that all through basketball season. Comes back, it's a system of movement, and you're imprinting that on his brain. Well, if you get a good quarterbacks coach, they are imprinting on his brain those throwing mechanics. And now they will, just like, you see it in baseball all the time, right? The shortstop who gets the yips, all of a sudden can't throw. Catcher all of a sudden can't throw it down to second base.
Right.
So you have to monitor it, but you should be able to teach him how to do something. Get somebody else to imprint on his brain how to throw, and then your teacher reads. So, yeah. Nice to have the guru, but you don't have to have it.
Yeah, and also I think about like this too, with the O-line versus quarterback coach debate, if you will. You're coaching one kid.
Yeah.
So I can take any coach, buy him a system, right? The R4 or the whoever's quarterback system that you want your offense to work off of. I can purchase that, give it to my new coach in the summer or in the spring and be like, you will become a quarterback savant. By the time that we get to season,
much easier than offensive line. Yeah.
Right. But he has 1, maybe 2 kids. You're going to have a backup. I'm going to watch.
Who for us is a starting receiver. But
right. So I'm going to watch.
Actually, for us, he's a starting defensive end this year. But
there you go. And I can go out and watch that kid. And if there's an issue, it's glaringly obvious, and I can go make a correction as the OC/head coach, whatever. And then we can take things from there. But when it's the O-line, and I have a guy that I've bought a system, I got Joe's O-line coaching formula, and he's got the playbook, so he knows the stuff, right? And now there's 5 dudes that he screwed up on the team if he makes a mistake.
Yeah.
Also, it's a little more hidden. I'm not going to be able to see what is it. Why is power not hitting? You know what I mean? And it's because
if you're not directly involved in the if you're not directly involved in coaching the offensive line, it is very hard, especially if you don't get end zone shots.
Yeah.
It's very hard to figure out the problems. And I struggle with how a coordinator can run an offense and not understand
every position,
the blocking.
Yeah. Well,
and at a Division I level, I've got an offensive-minded, coordinator, great quarterbacks coach, and I hire an offensive line coach.
Right.
In the high school level, it's very likely that I don't have anybody more qualified than I am to do it. So, and that should be all of us, because the fact is, all of us should be working harder to know our craft than, honestly, most of the people you work with. Because I can tell you, there's not a lot of people that really are truly invested in this, how to do the detail work. There's a lot of egos that think they know how to do it. I have an ego, a very big ego, but I've got a track record for it.
Right.
Dale has a massive ego with speed training, but Dale's got a resume that nobody can touch.
Yeah.
He's earned the right.
Google me.
He doesn't use the Googles that much. He's earned the right to say this is how it's done, and can back it up. So, but most of us haven't, and there's a lot of people with a big ego who haven't earned that ego. And if you don't have that ego, you should be able to be a better coach at any position that you want to be a better coach at than most people. And this goes back to the few episodes we talked about moving around on the staff. The most valuable you can possibly make yourself is to become a great offensive line coach. Nothing is ever going to make you more valuable than that.
Coach O-line, teach biology.
The only thing that will make you more valuable than being an O-line coach is being a football coach who can teach math or science. And then you can just walk in anywhere you want and get a job. Yeah,
pretty much. Sweet.
Got it.
I think that's it.
We hit all the spots?
I think we did.
Perfect. This is a
boxes.
weird setting.
It's pretty neat.
But it is cool.
We were obviously had a conversation earlier about the in-person being so much different, but so much cooler. Like just sitting in with that. You guys weren't there. Go look at the other podcast. Sitting in a circle with 4 coaches and just chit-chatting is much easier than staring at a Zoom screen where I'm more worried about if my microphone is close enough to my mouth than
constantly fiddling with the microphone or something.
Yeah.
No, it's like we talked about. Unfortunately, we're not in a industry where it is financially feasible to fly in guests and record.
Right.
It would be nice if it was, but it's just not in the cards for us. So when we get these opportunities to do it, it's good to get. We got a couple episodes, so.
Yeah. So that's gonna be it for this episode. We'll cut in all the other intros and outros later. Should get one more here. We hope that you saw us at AFCA. If you were there, hopefully you tracked us down. I know Joe's had his couple of fanboy moments today, which is
I very much enjoy that, by the way.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah.
It lets you know, the one coach just thanked you for what you do for ball, and that's what I get most of the time too. Thanks for what you're doing for football, because coaches don't know. So
great.
That's super cool. So continue doing that. If that's something that you're doing, come in to say hi. We'd love to chit chat with you. So I think that's it.
Cool. Wrap it up.
You can reach out to me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Joe is at joe@joedanielfootball.com. Don't forget to run over to Athletic Speed and Movement and sign up there to make your team faster in 2024, which we're in now, which is still wild because it was August last week.
It was.
All right. Thank you, guys.